All right, in 1994, I had left UW, came back home to Spokane to be with my then girlfriend, soon to be wife Heidi, and I ended up taking some classes at a local community college. At the end of my time there, I found myself doing this research paper. It's the final paper of the class. I think it was the final paper of my whole time at this place. And I wrote it, and I got this. A incomplete I grade student contract. Student contract said I had to rewrite the paper because the paper was so bad the professor couldn't even finish it, couldn't give me a grade for the paper, couldn't give me a grade for the class. So I had the summer to rewrite the paper. Now let's get this out of the way right off the bat. The title of the paper was The Wrong of Homosexual Rights. Kind of cringe at the title, although it is clever, classic Ryan. But I cringe at the title and I cringe at the paper. I mean, this paper would not be what I would say, obviously, today. I have changed. This has been well documented, so I don't really even want to read the paper and what my stupid arguments were, but that's beside the point. The point is I got an incomplete on the assignment, and this is why. Ryan, I'm sorry, but you need to take an incomplete. You're missing the point of the assignment. State a view and then do extensive research and support it. She wrote all over the paper. You can see the ink everywhere. My favorite page is this one right here. At the bottom it says this: "I'm stopping here!" exclamation mark. Not a research paper. This is a gut feeling paper. So that paper, incomplete. Summer goes on. I don't really care much about this class or have a lot of respect for it. So when the time comes to turn in a new paper, I hit Command P, print. I literally don't change one thing. I'm happy to send copies of these to you if you don't believe me. I hit reprint and I turn in the new paper. This is what the professor said. "Ryan, I'm glad you worked on this. It really improved. Your clear distinction between special and equal helps. 80 out of 100. Bam. I really will say this is the lesson that has stuck with me from my years in college. So kudos to the community college, I guess. This is the lesson that stuck with me. The same person read the exact same words 3 months later, which is not a long time in the grand scheme of things, and came to radically different conclusions. What can I learn from that? Well, I learned, honestly, a lot of things. First one is this. Critics have a lot of shit going on in their head. And actually, we all do. We don't think like we think we think. You don't think like you think you think. I don't think like I think I think. We have so much thinking going on without us even aware we're thinking that it affects everything we think we think. And critics have all of this going on. So this is an easy one. But anytime we're criticized, there's probably a lot more going on to it. She was very critical of this paper because I'm sure she was much more progressive than I was. And the whole idea of this paper really riled her up. And so she was unable to see that this thing was even good. I get it. I've done it. I've been in both sides of it. And the first thing we need to always remember with any critic is there's probably a lot more going on than we think. But there's a lot more going on, like I said, in all of us than we think. This is the world of biases. There are cognitive biases. Major researchers have said there's 150 of them. Here's a partial list. Okay, that's a partial list, I think, of everything. But there's 3 main categories of biases, one could say. First, we have the cognitive biases, which that list was mostly of. And these are like hindsight bias. So we look back to times that came before us and we look at them better than they actually were. In part because we know how the story played out. We can send our brains back there knowing how the story played out and thinking that's how the story played out and thinking that's what we would know if we went back there. But we didn't know it then, so we didn't think that then. This is how Make America Great Again elected a man. Side note, if you ask people when America was great and go back to that time when America was great, the people there thought America was great at some other time before it. So there was no time America was ever great. This is hindsight bias. Confirmation bias. This is the one where we seek out any information that will confirm something we already think we know. The internet does a great job of doing this for us. It gives us news sources, articles that it knows we like to confirm with more information the things we already know, which makes it so much more difficult to purposely seek out things that don't confirm what we want confirmed. There's millions of these, there's 150, but there's so many of these and you can look into all of them. There's heuristics. These are mental shortcuts. By the way, cognitive biases, they say, are patterns of thought and behavior that lead us to draw incorrect conclusions. So you can see how hindsight is a pattern. We look back, we think it's better, and it leads us to an incorrect conclusion that things are worse now than they were then. Heuristics are mental shortcuts we take. So there's 3 types of these, and there are a lot of examples, one of which is anchoring. So if you hear a suit costs $5,000, we go, oh my gosh, that's crazy. If you hear a suit costs $1 million first, and then this suit is $5,000, you go, oh, $5,000, that's not much. Salespeople take advantage of this often. We have availability heuristics. If we can recall it, it must be really important. If it quickly comes to our brain, that must be more important than the things that we really have to work hard for. There's logical fallacies. This is like a math problem, but it's a language or thinking problem, and we skip things in order to get to a quick conclusion. So these are ad hominem. These are when we go at someone personally, like all people who think this are this, or all people from here are this. This is an appeal to ignorance. There's no evidence against this thing I believe. Well, there might be evidence for this thing I believe, but I'm going to ignore that. I'm going to appeal to the fact that you're ignorant of the evidence against it. There's the false dichotomy, which is one of my favorites, and we'll go into this later because I think it's huge. And this is black or white thinking. Everything is either this or that. Vaccines are either safe or dangerous. When actuality, there's most things, everything arguably in life is somewhere in the middle. It's not either or, but this is again a logical fallacy that we use in order to see the world. So researchers say that at any given time, we have about 10 to 20 of these biases running through our brain. So that means as you're watching this, you have 10 to 20 biases, whether you're aware of them or not, that are filtering everything I'm saying. And I have 10 to 20 that are filtering everything I am saying. So if we go back to that teacher who is the same person reading the exact same words 3 months later and coming to 2 different conclusions, and we go to this idea that we have at least 150 cognitive biases and heuristics and logical fallacies running through our brains all of the time, what does that possibly mean for complicated issues in our society today? And society throughout human history. COVID, masks, shutdowns, vaccines, immigration, abortion, socialism, capitalism, Marxism, Black Lives Matter, gay rights, sexism, Me Too, gun rights, mass shootings, violence, military, nationalism, homelessness, cancel culture, being woke, areas, regions, cities, the way China is, the way Europe is, the way Seattle is, religions, or just very simple things like Apple versus Samsung or whatever company is trying their damnedest to compete with Apple and doing a miserable job of it. That's my own bias. I love Apple. These kinds of things, how are we ever supposed to come to any kind of agreement or even ability on what we're trying to agree or even argue on when there's endless articles, endless different words written from endless different perspectives, sometimes often with the purpose of convincing us of something, of endless different people, and time passing. I mean, if the same person can't read the same thing 3 months later and not come to the exact same conclusion, how are any of us reading a million different things on a million different opinions on a million different topics with all of these biases running through us, ever supposed to come to any kind of conclusion. And we say, well, we go to the research. But the problem with the research is that the research is done by people with biases also. So they too have 10 to 20 biases when they're doing the research, when they're adding up the research, and then when they're making a summary of the research meant to get into some article that wants to sell clicks and advertising and yada yada. So you see the point. I just read an article about, it was asking doctors and ICU nurses, etc., who have worked on COVID deniers who are dying of COVID for their experiences. And the list was pretty depressing, but I'll summarize it this way. Tons of people dying of COVID, insisting that COVID isn't real, asking the doctor what they're dying of, and the doctor says you're dying of COVID, and they say, no, I know you're lying to me. Tell me what I'm actually dying of. This is the extent our brain will go with biases to make things fit into the world we want them to fit in. So, thank you to Professor, fill in the blank, for teaching me that lesson first. Not only are critics carrying all this shit, so are we all the time. Number 2, careful reacting too quickly. I think one could safely say, and I'm sure if I went and talked to this professor today, she was offended by the paper. And again, I would be offended by that paper today, given my point of view. She was offended. And forget all the biases. When we're offended, when we're running on emotion, when we're angry, the brain is flooded and all thinking goes out the window. So be careful of reacting too quickly. My wife and I just were talking about 2 different experiences. One of them when she got an email from someone that just shredded her. She responded, she asked another question. It was an email correspondence. And I mean, we were so mad at this person. How could she dare send us this email? My wife just said, I just went and reread that email, and looking at it now, I kind of see her point. I get what she thought I was saying and how I came across, and I get why she reacted the way she did. I too just had a similar experience. I had taken notes from a meeting I had with someone a couple years ago. Pretty precise notes, I have to say. I was impressed with myself. And I was reading through these notes, and I thought, wow, Ryan, I mean, this person kind of had some good points. And wow, you responded kind of like an ass in some of these points. I mean, wow, kudos to you for holding your ground here, but I wonder if you were a little harsh. So, we all are carrying our stuff, critics included, and don't respond too fast. Maybe just give it a day or a few days or a week when things have cooled down, and at least we're back into normal biasy mode instead of anger flush mode. Number 3, think again. So it's easy to look back at this paper. I wanted an A. And I had to, I don't know if I was really thinking it through this clearly back then, because I just didn't really respect the school. Probably didn't care that much. I was also 19 or 20 and just kind of an idiot. But I wanted an A, or I at least wanted a passing grade. And I came to the conclusion that the paper actually was good enough. That it wasn't me, it was her. And this is really an interesting thing to think about as we go through life. Because sometimes it is us, and sometimes it is them. But just thinking again is really valuable. Is this thing actually good, and is this person off, or is it me? And again, this is time. But this is kind of like the American Idol singer that no one wants to be, who their mom told them they were the greatest singer on earth, and then they get to American Idol and they just get bashed. Like, none of us want to be that person. That's one of my worst fears. But then again, on the other hand, I say, I don't know. How many of those people have been told they were terrible singers by American Idol and have gone on to make a living or to be able to express that gift in some other form? So at the end of the day, it's taught me to think again. Yes, I was told this was the worst paper she'd ever read, basically, and I was completely missing the point. But I had enough trust and faith in the paper that she was wrong. That's not always the case, but it's worth thinking about. Number 4, big. This is no surprise. This has kind of been the theme. go big. Biases are small. The whole point of biases is to make the world smaller, and often this is good. I've heard it said that a fish with no boundaries will die. I mean, you can have a boundaries of a fishbowl, or you can have the boundaries of an ocean, but a fish with no boundaries doesn't live. Same with humans, same with every species. There are environments where we're able to live, and there are environments where we're not, and so those do require boundaries. But biases are always trying to make those boundaries a little smaller. And in some cases, this is good. When we go to buy a bottle of ketchup or a bottle of wine, there's so many. We actually need these biases to ever get out of the store, because otherwise we'd be sitting there for hours trying to analyze which bottle of wine was worth it and better and tastes and which one are we on in that. We get it, right? There are points where we said we just need to pick this one out, and these are valuable. But generally, biases don't help us get bigger. So how do we get rid of these biases? I mean, well, first we have to acknowledge we have them, but then secondly, we just have to work on being bigger. It takes effort. Everything is trying to make it smaller. And again, sometimes this is valuable, but if we're trying to be in a more diverse, more global, more unified, more empathetic, more kind, more what I see in you, I see in me, what you see in me, I see in you, this climate, this environment we live in. Gosh, climate change, talk about another one. This world we live in, how do we care for it? Because it is us. If we're trying to get to any of these points, we've got to go big, which means we've got to somehow crack openings in these biases. And that takes time and effort. And it's just friggin' damn annoying. And we have to work hard at it. But it's worth it to go big. Number 5, no one really knows. I mean, honestly, at the end of the day, no one knows. And this is such a good thing to remember. Did that professor know that paper was terrible? No. Did I know it was good? No. Did I know it was right? No. Second time she read it, did she know it was good? No. Did I know it was good? No. What do we even know? Now, sometimes this can really go to like, well, then what's the point of even talking about anything, because none of us know anything. And there is something healthy about that. I don't know. I have a lot of opinions. And the best thing I can do is admit to you that I have 150 biases. I have 10 to 20 running through my head right now. And I have experiences that have attributed to those biases. And this is why I'm thinking the way I'm thinking. And this is why I'm saying what I'm saying. And please feel free to tell me something different, because I love hearing from you. And I hope you love hearing from me. And the more different it is, the better. Now that sounds so good on paper, but I hate it when it happens. Because I actually don't want to hear from you when you disagree with me. But this is, again, where the work has to happen, because I don't really know. So a quick example. In Europe, when potatoes came in from South America, which, side note, amazing story. Potatoes didn't exist. They were living on wheat. Potatoes actually changed Europe, but they came from basically South American regions. When they first came to Europe, they called them the devil's apple and had connotations of witches, poison, and stuff. I mean, people were scared to death of potatoes. And I like to laugh at that. I think that's so funny, because there also has this religion stuff, and I love to act like religious people are idiots, as you well know. But I had this little learning experience in the same podcast where I heard that. When the radio came out, scientists and psychologists said it was addictive and it was destroying kids' brains. When comic books came out, they said the same thing. And they were talking about social media. And I love to harp on social media. I saw The Social Dilemma, and I thought it was the most amazing thing ever, and I wanted to cancel all my social media. Half of our kids did. It's been this great, almost platform of mine. Like, social media is so evil. Well, in this podcast, they were talking about science, psychologists, just culture does a great job of hating anything new. Just like they hated the potato. They were scared of the radio. They were scared of comic books. We're scared of everything. And we're scared of social media. And actually, when you dive into the research on social media, it doesn't always say what we think it says. In fact, one study said that the effect of depression and anxiety, or even healthy thinking on children, was the same effect of potatoes. And glasses, wearing glasses as a kid, which I did, has a much more negative effect on the healthy thinking of a child than social media. So I gotta tell you right up, I am thinking right now about social media again from a whole new way. Because I heard this podcast and I thought, man, I wonder if I've been really biased on this. I wonder if I've just been confirming everything I want to confirm. I wonder if I've taken shortcuts and skipped logic in order to get where I want to get to. And what if I'm wrong? Because I don't really know anything. So maybe I should look into this. Along those same lines, it was talking about science in general. And as I think I leave religion, I become more into science and what science has to say. But here's the thing with science. Science isn't meant to replace some of the ideas that religion or community or culture had. And what we're now doing is we're going to science and we're going to research and we're saying, well, tell us your research, yes, but also tell us how your research affects the way I'm supposed to live. And that's not really the job of a scientist. The job of a researcher or any field in the sciences is to tell us the facts of the research in as unbiased way as possible, which is really difficult. But it's not to then tell us how we're supposed to live based on those facts. And to add to it, science takes time, and no one has time for anything anymore. The whole basis of science is that no one knows. And so I put out some research and someone puts out some other research that may agree or not agree. And it takes time for all of these researches to come to some kind of a conclusion that actually makes sense, which is one of the reasons people are so frustrated with COVID, because this thing came on the scene so quickly and there's been a lot of different research about it. And it's so easy to find your piece that you want for your biases or the way you want to see the world that you can latch on to it. But it takes time, and this is what science asks for. And so all of this has really gotten me thinking about my view of not only social media and its dangers, but just the value I've been giving to science lately. Because really, at the end of the day, science doesn't really know either. It's learning, like we're all learning. So all of that to say, thank you to that community college. Thank you to that professor, the same person, for reading the exact same thing and coming to two completely different conclusions 3 months apart. Because it taught me so much about the way the world works, about the way I think, about the way you think, about the way everyone around me thinks. And it's reminded me again that I don't really know much at the end of the day. That I have a lot more going on in my brain than I think, and that it's worth taking some time to slow down, to listen, to find alternate viewpoints, to research, to put in effort, to find wonder, to wonder with grit, in order to just live in a more peaceful, I could say that, a more peaceful, better, bigger world. So thank you, Professor. You did me a service.